What's up, Kansas City? I'm your host, Glenn Bryan Frizell. Today's special segment is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association. Today's special guest is serving as the Kansas City Library Director, a position he's held since 2005. We'd like to give a very special warm welcome to Kansas City Philanthropist, Mr. Crosby Kemper III.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you for being on the show. We won't give you too hard of a time today, but we do want to talk to you about some of the issues that you have been rather outspoken throughout the year. How's your year been going, first off, Mr.
It's been a great year for the library. One of our librarians, April Roy, got the I Love My Librarian Award, which is the #1 library award for frontline librarians. New York Times, New York Public Library, and the Carnegie Foundation give it.
How prestigious is that?
It is very prestigious. It's a huge award. And she got it for work that she does in the inner city, our most inner city library, the Bluford Library at 31st and Prospect, where she serves probably the most underserved community in Kansas City, in the metro area, doing great health and wellness programs, job search programs, literacy programs, early childhood programs. She's a fabulous librarian and spending her time helping the people who need the most help.
Now, I attend the Lucille Bluford branch, among other branches, every other month, the Black Classics Book Group.
Right.
Amazing renovations that have been done to that library. I mean, it just looks brand new, state of the art. We're going to talk about that. That's a common theme. We want our listeners, our viewers, to visit the libraries and take advantage of the modern, updated services that you've worked to put into play there, Mr. Kemper. But let's start off by talking about the TIF. In a recent newspaper, tax increment financing, in a recent rhetorical question in the Kansas City Star that appeared, you posted this question: can an 800-room Hyatt hotel scheduled to open in 2018 boost Kansas City's prospects when it opens? And you took the no side, affirmatively so. Yeah. We've had city council people on this show before, and the general consensus among people who support it is, yes, we should have this project. It will generate no direct revenue. The library generates no direct revenue. This project will generate no direct revenue for the school or library districts. It will result in no direct cost to either district. That's what Steve Rose says. Now, you have said, up until now, the city has been cheerleading. I'm angry with the untruths that are at the city level. You are not for a city tax-supported downtown convention hotel. Tell us why.
Okay, well, so two things. One, of course, there's a cost to the library, and that Steve doesn't understand TIF, unfortunately. I keep trying to educate him, but he doesn't get it. So if they employ the city's claim, which will probably be untrue, but the city's claim is that these will all be new jobs to the city, because there'll be a huge increase in hotel business because of this hotel. So there'll be new jobs. There'll be, I don't know how many, I've forgotten how many they predict, but let's say 300 or 400 new jobs in this convention center hotel. The library will serve those 300 or 400 people, right? Library services that we provide, all the services that we provide should be served by should serve those folks. So there should be a cost. And the city's own TIF proposal, the consultant that the city hired, shows that there is a cost to the library in doing that, and also shows that we have, over the entire life of the project, even assuming that property taxes eventually go up, we have a net negative. Over 23 years, it's negative to the library in terms of cost benefit. Those are the city's numbers. Steve should look at those numbers. Right, but the second cost, which is not in any of these numbers, but is going to be our biggest problem, is there isn't going to be any additional convention business. Kansas City's invested over $200 million in expanding the convention center. We've added hotel rooms in Kansas City, most of them tax subsidized, over the last decade. And what have we seen in terms of the number of conventions? We've seen them go down. And the reason for that is Kansas City is not a destination for convention business. We have to buy that business. If a convention, a big national convention like the NAACP, for instance, comes to Kansas City, the Chamber of Commerce in the city, the Convention and Visitor Bureau have to contribute money to get the NAACP.
So it is a risk that you don't believe will pay off?
It's not. Their own numbers show that we have to increase the convention business by 50 to 70% for their numbers to work out. And that's just simply not going to happen. It's a fantasy. It will not happen in a million years. I bet my entire fortune on that, and I guarantee you I wouldn't get anybody on the other side to take the bet.
That's some high risk stakes. Now, why? Now this project and the NIM project, why, is it, will it take money?
Yeah, it takes our
From-
money.
from the
So they're supposed to pay, when you have a building and you renovate a building and it becomes a very nice building, they'll pay the highest rent in the central business district will be paid by BNIM to the developer, Mrs. Hellsberg. They will pay the highest rent. There's no rent downtown, no rent at Crown Center, there's no rent in the Crossroads that's as high as the rent they'll pay. And who will be subsidizing BNIM in paying that rent? The library, the school district, the mental health board, the community colleges, the developmentally disabled will be sending the tax money we should be getting on that project back to the developer so they can keep the rent low at $26 a square foot, which is the highest rent being paid in the central business district. That this is such bad public policy that we should be subsidizing a wealthy developer in the third project that we're going to be doing. We'll be sending tax money from all those institutions I mentioned, the library and the school district, etc., to Mrs. Hellsberg on 3 buildings for 23 years. A huge amount of our tax money will be going to them, and she's subsidizing, in effect, subsidizing BNIM, which is one of our largest architecture and engineering firms, very profitable for the partners. Now, I guarantee you, none of them live at 31st and Prospect or off Independence Avenue or at 63rd and Swope Parkway, where we would send that money.
Right.
That's where that money would exist. And Steve Rose writes a column in which he says, well, look at Miriam Town Center in Johnson County. That was a successful TIF. Well, it was. It was. Now, of course, he didn't talk about Sprint or Applebee's or Charter Mortgage or the others that either are companies that are no longer there or in the case of Sprint, which is the single biggest until CERN, the single biggest deal that we did in tax subsidy. It's supposed to be 17,000 jobs. How many jobs are there at the Sprint campus today? 2,500. So I'd like him to talk about that. But we'd be happy if all our deals were like the Miriam Town Center deal in Johnson County, because it was only a 16-year deal. Ours are all 23-year deals. We would have, if every deal was like the Miriam Town Center deal that Steve thought was so great, we'd have $800,000 a year that we don't have today. And you know what we'd spend that money on? We'd spend that money on helping teens on Friday and Saturday night. We can't afford to stay open on Friday and Saturday night, but we'd stay open Friday and Saturday night and do teen programs. We do early childhood. We do more job search programs for the working poor, for people who are looking for jobs. A lot of them on the east side. We'd be doing the health and wellness stuff that we're doing at the Blueford Library and expand that to our other libraries. We'd be doing remote connections to the internet, the hotspot program we got going with the school district. We'd expand that so it was universal. That's what we do. We'd be helping the most underserved people in this community, and that's what the mental health board and the school district would be doing with their money, and community colleges.
Now, Mr. Kemper, you're certainly educating us, and Kansas City does definitely want to stay on the cusp of innovation. Why not? Why are we taking this issue to the voters? Why can't we decide?
Jennifer Wolfsey, who heads the parents organization in that school district, in the Kansas City, Missouri school district, has gotten up a petition to challenge this particular TIF. Now, I think I would prefer that we actually do an initiative like the one Jennifer's proposing, but that comprehends all TIFs, not just one particular. Not that we pick out Mrs. Hellsberg's TIF, BNIM's TIF. I think we shouldn't be voting on each individual one. But we can do that, and I understand they're actually going to submit the signatures on this. That's what I've been told. I haven't heard anything this week. And so we can do something about it. The voters can do something about it. But the main thing the voters can do, and Jennifer and Rosa James of the NAACP and Andrea Flinders of the Teachers Union and I, representing the library, have done this in terms of speaking at the TIF Commission. That's number one. And speaking at the City Council, that's number two. And at some point we need to take large groups of people, teachers, students, parents, library patrons. I took 75 teens to the governor's office. He threw us out, of course, to talk about library funding at the state level. Well,
in March of this year.
Yeah, earlier this year. And that was one of the great moments for the library and for our teen patrons. They got to look at how politics is done in Missouri. But my main point here is, those 75 teens, I can double that number and then add a lot of adults too. If we go to the city council here, we had to take them on buses to Jefferson City. They can get on the city bus, so they can carpool it. They can walk to City Hall to protest, and along with the teachers and the members of the NAACP, of which, by the way, I'm one. and the parents in the school district who know that they're being screwed today. They are being screwed by the city. In Johnson County, again, get back to Steve Rose and his comments, in Johnson County, the school district actually has, the Shawnee Mission School District has a veto on TIF in their district. We would be happy, with just one change in Kansas City, Missouri, if the school district had a veto on TIF, we would go home happy. That's all, the only change we'd need, right there. And we do Marion Town Center, we do, there are a lot. I supported Mrs. Hellsberg's first TIF.
Now, Mr. Kemper, you stated that a lot of these project developers are rich and they don't need the money back. Just taking it from my perspective, when I had a part-time job and I would pay taxes at the end of the year, around this time I would do my taxes and I would get all that money back. Why shouldn't people who are rich, if they have ideas for innovation and projects in the city, why shouldn't they get that money back?
Well, I'm not clear. Why did you get money back?
Well, my income tax bracket of part-time job, all that money.
Okay, so you had a very low tax bracket, and you were overpaying in your in your pay slip
during the year.
Yeah, so I get that, but you're actually paying taxes. I think my view is, and I'm a libertarian, and some libertarians believe in flat taxes. I don't believe in flat taxes, and I do believe that everybody should pay their fair share. So I don't believe we need to subsidize. I think it's fine for wealthy people to find every tax break they can, but a direct subsidy of development where you're taking money from poor people. So these are taxes that are paid by the average taxpayer in Kansas City. The average individual taxpayer is making $29,000 to $30,000 a year. The average household income is about $43,000 a year in Kansas City, Missouri, and we're sending that money to people whose incomes are a lot larger than that. I won't speculate on what they are, but they are a lot larger than that, and that's just wrong. That's just wrong. I don't. For you to get money on your personal taxes back, that's great. Your rate, whatever it is great. We have them at the federal level, and that's probably federal tax you're talking about. We have a very highly graduated progressive income tax system. At the city level, because of the earnings tax, we have a flat tax system, which is from $1, everybody pays the same amount. So you're paying the same amount that the Kempers are paying, the Halls are paying, the Ellsbergs are paying, etc.
You name these prominent people, and you have very prominent philanthropist friends here in the Kansas City area. I just want to ask you, why is it seems from my point of view, Mr. Kemper, it's always the same people who are the patrons who are giving to causes in the city?
Well,
why is that?
There's some truth to that, because I think some families and some corporations develop a culture of charitable giving, and families that have been around for a long time and that feel a stake in the city. You look at a guy like Ollie Gates as an example, who gives back a lot.
That's
from
a good
where
example.
we're sitting, we're 2 blocks away from a big investment that Ollie's a friend of mine made in the YMCA building, where the Negro Leagues were created, and he's done a lot of other things over time. He's helped the library, for instance. But he feels he's got a big stake in town. He's got kids in his business. His father was in the business. He's run this business for 50, 60, 70 years, whatever it is. So he feels roots in the city. You need people like that. And we need to support people like that, and that's one of the reasons we've supported some of these TIFs. We've supported Mrs. Hellsberg's original TIFs for Webster House and for the Vitagraph building where the symphony is headquartered. We supported the DST TIFs that renovated the west side. There are a lot of things that we would support. There are things that need support, and we would support them, even though I still think it's bad public policy to take money from the library and the school district and do this. I think the city should be doing most of this, and the city's the big beneficiary because they get taxes we don't get. We just get, and the school district primarily gets, property tax. The city's got the earnings tax. The city's got the utility tax. The city's got sales tax. So they get a lot more out of these deals, and they get it instantly because they're not putting that money back in. If we get any money, it's 23 years later, by which time, of course, everything's changed. There are a lot of companies that get these tax breaks that don't guarantee that they're going to stay in business or keep the same number. So they gave a $60 million tax benefit to FreightQuote, which is a great online logistics company. One of our great high-tech companies. Within 18 months of their getting this deal, they sold to a company in Minneapolis. And because it's an online company, they do everything virtually, they can move those jobs anytime, anywhere they want. And the former CEO, my friend Tim Barton, who's been a guy who's given back a lot to the city, I don't think he's even living in Kansas City anymore. So he got a huge tax benefit from the city, and that company's essentially gone today.
Thank you. Now, when I was taught growing up, too much whom is given, much is required,
Right.
and we definitely. It sounds like you advocate responsibility. That there's a responsibility, and we certainly have a responsibility here at What's Up Kansas City to continue educating ourselves on this matter. What a year it's been for freedom of speech on college campuses. I kind of relate that to you. Briefly mentioned in March you were thrown out of the Governor Nixon's office. What's the follow-up to that?
Well, what's going on
made headlines.
at Mizzou, which of course, I have a lot of loyalty there. My father was a Mizzou alum, and I've been on some boards at Mizzou and worked with UMKC and with the Columbia campus when I lived in St. Louis with UMSL. And so I'm a believer in the state educational system. And I chaired a commission on the future of higher education for Governor Holden. So I pay a lot of attention to this. I think, I'm also a graduate of Yale, and the two big campuses in which stuff has happened around this issue, the freedom of speech issue, are Yale and Mizzou. And unfortunately, I'm not in agreement with the students about this. I think they've shut down freedom of speech. I do think there's I think there is a big issue.
And my producer's telling me that Cascade Media Group started at the Kansas City Library.
That's true. So we support the freedom of speech that you guys represent, that Cascade Media represents. I do think there's a serious problem, but I think it's not really been talked about in an intelligent way on any side. I wouldn't blame the students for this at all. And that is, are African American students, or any students, but let's just talk about African American students, are they getting a good education at Mizzou? They make the point that there aren't a lot of teachers who look like them. And that's been one of the primary issues, and that racism is rampant. I'm not sure how much racism is rampant on the campus. I don't think they've made that case, but I get the point about there not being a percentage of teachers at the University of Missouri at the same level that are represented by the students on the campus or the population of the state of Missouri. I get that point, but where do we fix that? I don't think we actually fix that at the university level today. I don't think Tim Wolf or Mr. Lofton, the chancellor, the two who are gone, that they had a lot to do with that. I think where that starts is actually K through 12 in our public school system. We're not graduating enough African American kids who are able to, who meet the requirements of matriculating at the University of Missouri.
I'd like to ask you a question, and we would have to spend a couple of episodes at least talking about the Kemper family legacy. But how has your own your private school background, how has that kind of colored your opinion on these particular things? You went to two elite private schools.
So yeah, I did, and so it is an interesting story. I think my class at Pem Day, as it was then called, is now Pembroke, which is probably the leading private school in the metro area, was the first integrated class. In 8th grade, my class was integrated by two guys, Jerry Woods and Al Plow. And Jerry Woods and Al Plow, and Jerry's still in town, is a very prominent doctor, and Al Plow's story is a really interesting story. His father was the principal of a middle school in Kansas City, Kansas. And I got to know him. I knew him before I knew Al because he was a bartender sometimes at our family events. Now think about that. He was the principal of a middle school, an African American, who was still segregated. We're talking late 50s, early 60s, still segregated middle school, African American middle school in Kansas City, Kansas. But he was the principal, and to make ends meet, he had to moonlight as a bartender. I knew him as a bartender, right? And so Al was one of the two first black kids at Pembroke. They both did pretty well. Jerry did really well. I was usually the president of my class. Well, when Jerry showed up, Jerry was elected president of the class.
Now, I attended Meet the Past with the Crosby Kemper. I attended the series that you did with Zora Neale Hurston that
Right.
was filmed also by KCPT, I think late summer, early fall this year. And I know that the library has some great programs. I'm on the mailing list coming up. Holly Robinson Pete is appearing next week with children's author Shane Evans. Next Tuesday, I believe, at the
Shane is
Plaza
my hero.
Library. And we have conversations about students and financial aid and perhaps changing that system. And at the end of the month, we have our kickoff to the Book to Black Film series at Black Archives
Right.
with Professor Hort from UMKC. What can library patrons expect in January, February, throughout the year in the Kansas
Well,
City?
we'll be
Public
doing a
Library
lot.
System?
We're talking to Professor Hort, Adrian Hort, who runs the Black Studies Department at UMKC, about stuff we'll do during Black History Month, and we always, we always like to say at the library every month is Black History Month at the Kansas City Public Library, and we've got a lot of people we're talking to about coming in and doing, with what's happened in Ferguson and Mizzou, et cetera. The conversation on race is a big deal these days, and the library wants to participate in that conversation. So you'll see things. I sent an email this morning, as a matter of fact, to Carrie Coogan, who's our Director of Public Affairs, about that and some of the things we ought to do. We ought to be talking to the police chief, to Darrell Forte, about the NOVA program and what's going on in terms of violence in the city, because that obviously is a key concern and where Ferguson comes from, and I think he's been doing a good job on that. We had a bump in the road this year in terms of the murder rate. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about education and race. We need to talk about, when we did the Time to Get It Right report, and we look at the achievement gaps in the Kansas City School District and the Kansas City, Kansas School District, et cetera. These are huge issues. These are huge issues. And if we're going to solve any problems related to achievement gaps or to racial gaps of any kind, we're going to have to start in the education system. The library has a real interest in that. Of course, we're a part of that. And so you'll be seeing more about that specifically. And then I want to do something on jobs and where the good working class jobs have gone, and what we can do in this city to get them back, and get them back in the right places, so that people in the we thought with the Power and Light District as an example, because it's so close to the east side, that we generate a lot of jobs for first-time job seekers, for people who are having a hard time finding a job in the inner city. And a little bit of that happened probably with the 700, 800, 900 jobs in the Power and Light District, but not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. And we need to find out what the problem is there. We need more jobs, entry-level jobs for people, and good jobs, good paying jobs that you can step into from that entry-level job.
Well, education and jobs, career training are definitely two important issues, high impact issues that we promote here on What's Up Kansas City. Any final words for our viewers?
Well, I think look at the city. Everyone needs to look at the city and the way they spend money. Corporate welfare, sending money to developers and to big corporations, is a huge part of the Kansas City's budget. They're going to be required this coming year for the first time to actually add all that together, the subsidies for the Power and Light District, the subsidies, the payoff of the Citadel money, the borrowed money they have borrowed from the airport, et cetera, and then all the TIF money that they're doing and the other tax abatements. And if you add all that money up, it's somewhere between 150 and 200 million. Nobody's ever added it up before. I try to. And that would make it the second largest part of the city's budget after police and fire. And a lot bigger than infrastructure, a lot bigger than healthcare or neighborhoods or anything else they're spending money on. They're sending money to corporate developers. But we're not developing jobs. Central Business District, we're down 16,000 jobs. Every other central business district in the United States, pretty much every other one, is up in jobs. And we're down, despite all this corporate subsidy. So that's what people ought to be looking at.
We thank you very much for your time, Mr. Kemper. We'd like to encourage our viewers to stay tuned to what's next in the city, and also support your library. The website to KC Library is very simple, kclibrary.org. Very well maintained website. Who does your website?
David LaCrone's in charge of it. He's our digital branch manager.
It's excellently put together, and we want to make sure our viewers get that link. I'm your host, Glenn Brian Frizell, urging you to tune in for more video, www.what'supkansascity.net. And remember, the sky's the limit. Aim high. Shoot for the moon. If you miss, at the very least, you would have landed among the stars. Take care until next time.
I'm IFBB Bikini Pro Cat Williams, and when I'm not working out in the gym, I'm searching the web on Cascade Media and What's Up Kansas City. So make sure you check them out.